Imagine you did everything right. You saved consistently for 30 years. You paid attention to your 401k. You lived below your means, avoided serious debt, and built what looked like a comfortable retirement nest egg. And then you retired. And then, slowly, quietly, without any single dramatic event, rules you never knew existed started working against you. Your tax bill was higher than expected. Your Medicare premium jumped in a way that made no sense. A larger and larger piece of your Social Security check started disappearing to the IRS. And the money you thought would last you comfortably through your 70s and 80s began shrinking faster than your projections ever suggested. Not because of bad investments, not because of a market crash, because of hidden retirement rules that nobody explained to you before you stopped working. That is what we are talking about today. And if you are within 10 or 15 years of retirement, or if you are already retired, what you're about to hear could change the way you think about every financial decision you make from this point forward. There are rules inside the American retirement system that operate completely below the surface of the conversation most people are having. They aren't secrets exactly. They're in the tax code, they're on the Medicare website, they exist in IRS publications that you can technically find if you know what you're looking for. But they are never explained clearly. They are never laid out in plain language for the average person who is trying to figure out how to make their retirement income last. And the result is that millions of Americans walk into retirement genuinely believing they have prepared well, only to discover that the system they thought they understood has a second layer. A layer that taxes more, costs more, and compounds those costs in ways that are difficult to reverse once they begin. I want to walk you through those rules today, not in a technical textbook way, in a real, human, this is what it actually looks like, in practice way. And if you're new here, welcome. This channel, Mr. Retirement, exists because these conversations deserve to happen clearly, in plain language, for real people making real decisions. Hit like if you find value in this, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Now let's get into it, because there is a lot to cover, and all of it matters. Let me start with a man named David. David is 67 years old. He retired 2 years ago after a 34-year career in manufacturing management. He felt genuinely prepared. He had about $900,000 in a traditional 401k and IRA, around $40,000 in a regular savings account, and he was receiving Social Security, about $28,000 a year, which he had started at 65. He and his wife Janet lived modestly. Their house was paid off. Their kids were grown. Their monthly expenses ran about $5,000, which felt very manageable given what they had saved. David felt secure. He felt like he had done the hard work and earned this chapter. And in many ways, he had. But here's where it gets worse than David expected. When he started taking withdrawals from his traditional IRA, about $50,000 a year to supplement Social Security and cover their expenses, something he didn't fully anticipate started happening. His total income, once you added the IRA withdrawals to his Social Security, was around $78,000. And at that income level, the IRS was taxing 85% of his Social Security benefit as ordinary income. Not a small portion, 85%. That meant about $23,800 of the Social Security he was counting on, as stable income was being added back to his taxable income every year. He was effectively paying income tax on money he'd already paid payroll taxes on his entire working life. And nobody had sat down with him before he retired and walked him through exactly how that calculation worked. The Social Security taxation rule is one of the most misunderstood pieces of the entire retirement system. Most people know there's some level of Social Security taxation. What most people don't fully grasp is how quickly it activates and how broadly it applies. The IRS uses a figure called your combined income, sometimes called provisional income, to determine what percentage of your Social Security is taxable. That calculation takes your adjusted gross income, adds any tax-exempt interest you receive, and then adds 50% of your annual Social Security benefit. If that combined figure is above $25,000 for a single filer, or above $32,000 for a married couple filing jointly, up to 50% of your Social Security becomes taxable. If it climbs above $34,000 for singles or $44,000 for couples, up to 85% is taxable. And the uncomfortable truth is that these thresholds have not been adjusted for inflation since they were set in 1984 and 1993, which means they were designed for a world where very few retirees had significant income. Today, with average 401k balances and typical withdrawal amounts, the vast majority of middle-class retirees with any meaningful retirement savings are paying taxes on up to 85% of their Social Security every year for the rest of their lives. For David, this meant his effective tax bill was thousands of dollars higher annually than he had projected. Over a 20-year retirement, that's not a rounding error. That's a potentially staggering cumulative cost driven entirely by a rule he didn't understand clearly enough before he made his withdrawal and claiming decisions. But here's the part that most people don't realize yet. The Social Security taxation trap is just one layer. It interacts with everything else, with your withdrawal amounts, with your Medicare premiums, with your required minimum distributions, in ways that stack on top of each other. And that stacking effect is where the real damage happens. Let me introduce you to Maria. Maria is 69, retired 3 years ago from a career in healthcare administration. She was diligent with her retirement savings, had about 1.1 million in traditional IRA accounts. Her Social Security benefit was about $22,000 a year. She had a small pension from an earlier job that paid her about $800 a month, and she felt confident. She had run the numbers. She knew her expenses. She thought she understood her income. What Maria did not know was that her income picture was about to be judged by a set of eyes she hadn't considered: Medicare. In Maria's first year of retirement, she needed to replace her roof, replace her car, and handle a few significant home repairs. She decided to pull a larger amount from her IRA that year, about $90,000, to cover those expenses and buffer her savings account. It felt like a reasonable financial decision in the moment. Her income for that year, including her IRA withdrawal, Social Security, and pension, came to roughly $120,000. She paid her taxes. The year ended. She moved on. 2 years later, Maria received her Medicare renewal notice. Her Part B premium, which she had been paying at the standard rate of about $174 a month, had jumped sharply. She was now being billed at a significantly higher tier. The reason? Her income from 2 years prior. That's the IRMAA rule, the income-related monthly adjustment amount, and it operates on a 2-year look-back. Medicare doesn't look at what you're earning today. It looks at what you earned 2 years ago. And in the year Maria had the large one-time withdrawal, her income had crossed a threshold that bumped her into a surcharge tier she never anticipated. For a married couple in 2024, the IRMAA surcharges can add hundreds of dollars per month to Medicare costs depending on how high the income goes. For Maria, the additional cost added up to over $4,000 in that single surcharge year, on top of everything else she was already managing. The cruelest part of the IRMAA trap is the delay. You make a decision today, and you don't feel the consequence until 2 years later, when it feels completely disconnected from the original choice. Most people who get hit with IRMAA don't even immediately understand why their premium increased. They think it's routine Medicare inflation. They call their doctor's office confused. They don't trace it back to the withdrawal decision they made 24 months earlier. And because they don't make the connection, they don't adjust their strategy going forward. They don't know to spread large withdrawals across multiple years to stay below IRMAA thresholds. They don't know that there's actually an appeals process for IRMAA if your income has dropped significantly since the look-back year. They don't know because nobody explained the rule before they needed to know it. Here on Mr. Retirement, we talk about the IRMAA rule regularly because it catches so many people off guard in exactly this way. The income thresholds for 2024 start at $103,000 for individuals and $206,000 for married couples. If you're even $1 above that threshold, you move into the first surcharge tier, $1, and a large one-time withdrawal for a car, for home repairs, for helping a child, can push you over that line even in a year when you otherwise would have been safely below it. Now I want to shift to something that connects directly to both of the traps we've already talked about, and that gets worse with time if not addressed early. Required minimum distributions, RMDs. If you've been contributing to a traditional IRA or 401k for decades, the IRS has been patient. It has allowed your money to grow tax-deferred, which felt like a benefit while you were working. But that deferral was never permanent. It was always a loan of sorts, deferred tax that would eventually come due. And the collection mechanism for that debt is the required minimum distribution. Starting at age 73, and for those born after 1960, age 75, the IRS requires you to withdraw a minimum amount from your pre-tax retirement accounts every year. The amount is calculated by dividing your account balance as of December 31st of the prior year by a life expectancy factor from the IRS's published tables. For a 73-year-old, that factor is currently about 26.5, which means you'd be required to withdraw roughly 3.7% of your account balance each year. That sounds manageable. But here's the reality. For someone who has a traditional IRA worth $1.3 million, which is not unusual for a disciplined saver who started early and had a long career, the first RMD is approximately $49,000. That $49,000 gets added to your Social Security income. It gets added to any pension you receive. It gets added to any other income sources you have. And suddenly your combined income is at a level that pushes 85% of your Social Security into taxable territory, potentially triggers IRMAA Medicare surcharges, and could bump you into a higher federal tax bracket than you've been in for the first decade of your retirement. And you have no choice about it. It is mandatory. You cannot decide to skip the RMD to stay in a lower bracket. The IRS requires it. And if you fail to take it, the penalty is 50% of the amount you should have withdrawn. 50%. That's not a soft consequence. This is the RMD trap, and it's a trap that builds slowly and silently through your 60s, then springs in your 70s when your flexibility is most limited. The people who fall into it hardest are the ones who never diversified their tax exposure, who put essentially everything into traditional pre-tax accounts, because that's what felt intuitive while they were working. The match went into the traditional 401k. The default contribution went into the traditional 401k, and for 30 years, that was fine because the tax deferral felt like a benefit. What those people didn't see was that they were building a future tax liability, not just a future retirement asset. Let me tell you about Tom and Sandra. They're 62 and 60, still working, with about 1.4 million in combined traditional IRA and 401k accounts. They have about 60,000 in a Roth IRA from some contribution Sandra made in her early 40s. They're planning to retire at 65 and 63 respectively. They feel good about their savings, and they should. They've done an exceptional job building assets, but their financial trajectory has a problem that neither of them has fully reckoned with yet. At 65, Tom starts Social Security, about $31,000 a year. Sandra plans to wait until 67. They begin taking modest withdrawals from their traditional accounts, about $45,000 a year between them to supplement Social Security and cover their expenses. Their combined income is manageable in those early years, but at 73, Tom's RMD begins. His traditional IRA at that point, assuming reasonable market growth and modest withdrawals over the prior 8 years, may be sitting at roughly 1.2 million. His RMD at 73 could be $45,000 or more. Mandatory, added directly to taxable income. Sandra's RMDs begin shortly after. Between the two of them, their combined RMD income in their mid-70s could run $90,000 to $100,000 annually, on top of their combined Social Security of close to $60,000. Their total income could exceed $150,000 per year, all of it fully exposed to federal income tax, with 85% of their Social Security taxable, and with IRMAA surcharges hitting their Medicare premiums every year. Compare that to their neighbors, Kevin and Diane, who have a similar level of savings, but made different structural decisions. Kevin and Diane also have about 1.3 million saved, but they have it split more evenly. About 700,000 in traditional accounts, 300,000 in a Roth, and 300,000 in a taxable brokerage account. In the years between Kevin's retirement at 63 and his RMD age at 73, they spent a decade intentionally doing Roth conversions. Each year, they converted an amount that kept them just at the top of the 22% federal bracket. They paid taxes on those conversions at 22 cents on the dollar. They moved money deliberately from a fully taxable bucket into a permanently tax-free bucket. By the time Kevin's RMDs began, his traditional account balance was significantly smaller, perhaps $500,000 instead of over $1 million. His annual RMDs were around $18,000 instead of $45,000. Their combined income in their mid-70s was dramatically lower. Less Social Security was taxable. No IRMAA surcharges. A lower effective tax rate. The same amount of money, spent the same way, but kept at a much higher rate because of how it was structured going in. This is the contrast that defines retirement outcomes for people with similar savings. Not the stock picks, not the timing of the market, the tax structure, the intentionality of how the money was positioned before the rules took over. Now I want to go deeper on the Roth conversion window, because this is one of the most powerful tools in the retirement planning toolkit, and also one of the most commonly missed. The window I'm talking about is the years between retirement and the beginning of Social Security and RMDs. For many people, this is a period of relatively low income, maybe 5 to 10 years, where your income is lower than it's been in decades, lower than it's going to be once Social Security starts and RMDs kick in. That low-income window is your best opportunity to move money from pre-tax accounts into tax-free accounts, to pay taxes at 12% or 22% on money that would otherwise be taxed at 24% or higher in your 70s. Every dollar you convert in that window is a dollar that grows tax-free for the rest of your life, and never triggers a required minimum distribution, because Roth IRAs have no RMD requirement. But here's the mistake almost everybody makes with Roth conversions. They either do nothing, they miss the window entirely because nobody told them it was closing, or they do too much in a single year, converting an amount that pushes them into a higher tax bracket or over an IRMAA threshold, causing them to pay more in taxes on the conversion than they needed to. The discipline of Roth conversions is in the calibration. You want to convert just enough each year to fill your current tax bracket without overflowing into the next one. Doing this consistently over a 5 to 10 year window can dramatically reduce your pre-tax account balance by retirement's most financially complex phase, your early 70s. Let me bring in one more story, because I think it illustrates something important about the psychological dimension of these hidden rules. Linda is 64 and recently widowed. Her husband passed away 14 months ago after a brief illness. She's now filing as a single taxpayer instead of jointly, which means her tax brackets are cut in half. The thresholds that used to apply to her at married filing jointly rates now apply at single rates. The IRMAA thresholds that used to start at $206,000 for a couple now start at $103,000 for her individually. The Social Security provisional income thresholds that used to be $32,000 and $44,000 are now $25,000 and $34,000. Her entire financial picture changed dramatically, not because her income changed, but because her filing status changed. And for at least 1 year, her Medicare premium will be calculated on joint income from the prior year, which was significantly higher than her individual income now. Linda has what's sometimes called the widow's penalty in the retirement finance world. It's not a formal IRS term. It's a real-life reality that affects millions of surviving spouses who find themselves suddenly in a single-filer tax environment with income levels that were designed for a couple. Her traditional IRA withdrawals, her husband's small pension she continues to receive, her own Social Security. All of it is now measured against single-filer thresholds, and it's painful in ways she didn't anticipate while she was navigating grief. This is the hidden rule that nobody warns couples about, the tax and Medicare implications of survivorship. And it's something that can be planned for, mitigated, and in some cases significantly softened if the couple understood the risk and built their financial structure accordingly while both were still alive. The deeper point here is that the hidden retirement rules don't operate in isolation. They interact with each other. Social Security taxation interacts with your withdrawal amount. Your withdrawal amount interacts with IRMAA. IRMAA interacts with your Medicare premiums 2 years later. Your RMD size is determined by your account balance, which is shaped by whether you did Roth conversions in your 60s. Your filing status affects every threshold in every calculation. It's a system. And when you understand it as a system, you can manage it. When you don't, the system manages you. Let me give you a simple but powerful way to think about this. Picture your retirement income as water filling a series of connected containers. The first container is your tax bracket. When it fills up, the water doesn't stop. It overflows into the next bracket, which taxes at a higher rate. The second container is the Social Security taxation threshold. Once you fill it, your Social Security starts getting added to the pile. The third container is the IRMAA threshold. Overflow that, and Medicare costs increase. And underneath all of it, the RMD pipe is slowly adding mandatory water at a rate you can't control once it starts, pushing every other container fuller, faster, whether you want it to or not. The people who manage retirement well are the ones who understood the containers before they retired, who mapped out the system, who figured out which valves to open, which to keep closed, and when, who used the Roth conversion window to reduce the flow from the RMD pipe before it became uncontrollable. And the people who struggle, not because they failed, but because they were never shown the system, are the ones who filled every container as fast as possible with pre-tax money, assumed the tax consequences would be manageable, and discovered in their 70s that the mandatory flows were larger than the picture they'd built in their heads. What can you actually do with all of this? What are the practical steps that come out of understanding these hidden rules? The first thing is to run a realistic income projection for your retirement. Not just a monthly snapshot, but an annual view that accounts for every source of income and every tax consequence. Know what your provisional income will be when Social Security starts. Know where you sit relative to the IRMAA thresholds in your likely withdrawal scenarios. Know what your RMD will be at 73 if you take no action between now and then. These numbers exist. They can be calculated. And seeing them clearly, even if they're uncomfortable, is infinitely better than discovering them after the decisions are already made. The second thing is to take the Roth conversion window seriously if you have one. If you are retiring before Social Security begins, and before RMDs kick in, you may have years of relatively low income opportunity in front of you. Use them. Convert deliberately. Pay modest taxes now to eliminate larger taxes later. This is not a complicated concept. It just requires discipline and consistency. The third thing is to think about Medicare and IRMAA before you make any large one-time withdrawals. If you need a significant amount from your IRA in a given year, understand what that does to your income figure and whether it crosses an IRMAA threshold. In some cases, it makes sense to spread a large expense across 2 calendar years rather than taking it all at once. In other cases, there are ways to access funds from taxable accounts or Roth contributions that don't affect your provisional income at all. Know your options before you act. The fourth thing, and this is especially important for married couples, is to model what your financial picture looks like if one of you passes away. The surviving spouse's tax situation can change dramatically and quickly. Understanding that risk in advance allows you to position your assets, your income sources, and your account types in ways that reduce the widow's penalty rather than maximizing it. None of these steps require you to become a tax expert. They require you to be informed enough to ask the right questions, work with the right professionals, and understand the system you're operating inside of. Because the system is not neutral, it has rules, and the rules reward the people who understand them and cost the people who don't. I want to close with something that I hope stays with you after this video ends. The hidden retirement rules we've talked about today: Social Security taxation, IRMAA, Medicare surcharges, RMD traps, Roth conversion windows, filing status consequences. None of them were designed specifically to catch you. They weren't constructed as traps. They're the layered result of decades of tax legislation, Medicare policy, and retirement law that nobody has ever sat down and explained to the average American in plain English as a complete system. That's the real problem. Not malice, complexity. And complexity, in the absence of clear explanation, functions exactly like a trap. You deserve to understand the system you're operating inside. Not because you need to manage it all yourself, but because understanding it empowers you to ask better questions, make better decisions, and recognize when something doesn't look right. Every dollar you keep through smart retirement tax strategy is a dollar that stays in your life, available for health, for family, for experiences, for security, for whatever retirement was supposed to mean to you when you were building toward it all those years. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Did you know about these rules before today? Had you heard of IRMAA before watching this? Did the Social Security taxation threshold surprise you? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them, and your experience helped shape what we cover next. And if this opened your eyes to something important, share this video with someone who's getting close to retirement. Because the most valuable thing you can give someone in that position isn't money. It's the information that helps them protect the money they already have. Thank you for being here. Stay curious about your finances. Stay intentional with your decisions. And remember, understanding the hidden rules isn't optional in retirement. It's the difference between the retirement you planned for and the one the system hands you by default.